Welcome back. So we now have a panel discussion that is going to be moderated and led by the wonderful Mike Seymour from fxguide, who is just standing beside me. He's going to jump into shot in a minute and introduce everybody, and we're going to have a lovely discussion here. Please interact using hashtag #TFCgraph. I will be relaying questions and comments to Mike at the end on your behalf. So interact with us, engage with us. That would be awesome. So now I'm going to hand it over to the wonderful Mike. To you, sir. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you. So I thought we'd give away stuff from the Foundry because I don't own anything from the Foundry. So right out of the gate, we're giving away a T-shirt. Yep, there we go. Okay, that looks like I need a different size. There we go. So all day, we're going to be throwing out stuff. Okay, but actually what you're really interested in is what these panelists have to say, not what I have to say. So when I ask them to introduce themselves down the line.
Hey, I'm Barry Zundell. I'm with Volusion Studios, young company. We just started about 10 months ago. We do VR, AR, interactive media. It's a lot of fun. My background's in video games and film. I worked at Disney Interactive for about 9 years, Pixar for 3, and then headed up to Nike for about 2 years, and now we started Volusion, so happy to be here.
Hi everybody, I'm Alex Henning, longtime visual effects artist and supervisor, and somewhat new company co-founder. My company is called Magnopus. We're located in downtown Los Angeles, right here. Walk on over, come see us. And we are focused on visual development and immersive experience.
Hi, I'm Shannon Gans with New Deal Studios. We're a modern creative studio. We're known for visual effects. We've produced a lot of content, feature films, commercials, and now immersive content is where we're spending a lot of our time. And we have a music video premiering today on YouTube for a band called Galvanized Souls, a virtual reality music video.
A virtual reality music video. Okay, well, we're going to discuss VR because I want to get into some of the new business opportunities, and I'm going to come back to that. But first, I guess if we could just ask you, Alex, in the middle, how broken is the VFX industry? Are we literally in the dying carcass of a dinosaur that's gasping for breath in the last stages of a declining industry, or are there actually a few visual effects done in films?
Just right out of the gate, Mike. I like it. You know, I think we're in a state of constant evolution in the visual effects industry. I don't know that it'll ever go back to what it was 10 years ago, but maybe that's not such a bad thing. I think that the industry will continue to evolve. Obviously, the demand for visual effects is as large as and getting larger on a yearly basis. So I don't think it's going anywhere. I think that perhaps some of the older models for business, for how the business of visual effects is handled, will probably fall by the wayside. New models will emerge.
Okay, so let's discuss business models for a second. It's not so interesting you think, but actually it is because it funds what we want to do. And to do anything we want to do creatively, we need to do it in a profitable way so we can hang around. Now, in the animation business, the model, as I understand it, is primarily transparent, right? It's like time and materials. In the VFX world, it hasn't been that. It's the closed bid. Is the problem literally starting there, that we're just pricing things wrong? Is the animation business loving it because we just can't get our act together in VFX?
I don't know. I think my background is not necessarily visual effects, but it was more movies and video games. I think the financing, it's hard to say, not having been in the visual effects industry very much. But I think from an animation standpoint, from an economic standpoint, when we to keep the business going, you've got to be able to cover your bases. You know, you got to be able to pay those bills, and you can't shortchange your employees and the quality of your product by trying to bring your price so far down that you can't make what you need to make and what you want to make anymore. So
Shannon, I used to work in commercials, and what we used to say back then is if you want creative freedom, do video clips. If you want to make some money, do commercials. And if you want glory, you'll do film. Yeah. And this kind of led to people doing the films and killing each other to get the glory. Is that still the case, do you think?
I think some companies, as we continue to expand globally, are doing that. But really it comes down to, we all have the tools, and it's the artists and what we do with them. And as feature films and other content evolves, it's an opportunity actually for people who've worked in visual effects to kind of move in and take a bigger part of the process in visual development, in creating our own content. And so in a way, because things have changed so dramatically, we have done the same thing in terms of a constant rolling evolution of our studio. And there's an opportunity to make our own products, so we are.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely going to discuss that in terms of like some of the initiatives, because all of these individuals here have come up with some really amazing initiatives. But before we get there, Alex, it seems to me that in addition to this transparency issue, we're obviously in a climate where a lot of work moves around because of subsidies. There are other issues where people feel like there aren't respect for the rights of individuals as workers, mainly sometimes because people, as I say, are desperate to do stuff and will do anything to get into the industry. And then there's this other big question, I think, which is, I said a moment ago we want to do film because of the glory, but it used to be that it was the coolest game in town. But I've been here at SIGGRAPH, and there's been a number of speeches where someone has presented a paper and they say, I used to be with so-and-so effects company, I'm now with Google in robotics. And I'm like, Google, what has that got to do with, you know, whatever? And it's like, well, I've moved out of VFX, but I had this paper, and so it's gone. Are we losing our best and brightest in our engineers to the wonderful work, but, you know, let's face it, the high, how can I put this, share option community in Silicon Valley?
That's a good question. I think that partially just what's happening is you have individuals who have been in the industry for a long time who maybe just don't have the appetite for the type of travel maybe that's necessary anymore. You know, as you advance in the industry and you start taking on supervision roles, you might be asked to be on set for months and months at a time. That's a hard way, I think, to live on a year-to-year basis, especially as you get older and have a family and want to actually spend some time with them and get to know them as much as you get to know your coworkers and your director. So I think that part of it is that you have people who are ready to find a way to leave some of that volatility and to be honest, some of that adventure behind, and sort of take a chance, take a different type of risk and explore something new. I think at the same time, though, you obviously have a lot of young people who are still very, very interested in becoming part of the visual effects community. What'll be critical over you know, the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years as this transition that we're in is taking place, is to make sure that the sort of the newer generation of artists and supervisors is having the opportunity to learn from the current and the exiting group.
I mean, as I've published on fxguide, I'm a big believer in the need for more transparency. Your company's done a lot of work in pioneering some of those new business models in terms of not saying we're going to just, you know, outsource. We're not saying we're going to just run to the bottom, but we're going to try and structure things a bit differently. Yeah. But it's a big educational problem, isn't it?
I think so. It's a challenge, but I think it's a welcome challenge, and it really is a two-way street. If you're going to build a model around being sort of cost plus, then you have to be very transparent with your clients. You have to be very upfront about how you're spending their money. And you know, on the projects where we've employed that model, we've been pretty happy, and I think our clients have been very happy with how that's turned out, because it becomes more of a collaborative process, right? Something that we really like about it is that it enables producers on both ends to actually produce, because it's not sort of a blind line item fee to do this bulk of work. It's sort of, it can become a collaborative process to decide how and where to spend resources to best get things done, and when to abandon something that's not working to try a new approach, and where to set your priorities.
Because that's been traditionally the model in animation, that you basically at the end of the week say, well, we'd allocated 20 man-hours of this and 50 man-hours of that, and we ran this budget and we did that. You do all of that open to the producer. And I got to say that my friends in animation tend to work more sensible hours. I mean, obviously there's some crunch at the end of any project, but it's not hell on wheels.
No, I mean, when I was at Pixar, hours were great. You know, I mean, you had those times where you had to work overtime and you really pushed and you really pushed hard. But it was nice to have a very kind of stable situation. I think at Volusion, we're trying to do the same thing where, you just be very, very upfront and honest with what's needed, what's it going to cost, how we're going to allocate funds. And when you have that honesty and integrity on both sides, and it's open on both sides, it benefits both of them because you know as a business owner what you need to do, and as a client, when you look at it from the client side, the client knows exactly what they're getting, and I think that relationship really builds camaraderie and it builds trust, and that actually just helps the whole business grow.
I think we used to assume producers didn't understand what we did, so we had to simplify it and put it in a bubble, but I don't think that's the case. Shannon, in the old days, in the earlier days of model work, was that sort of time and materials, or was it just big flat bids? Was it like, I'm going to blow up this thing and it's...
Oh yeah, big flat bids.
Right.
And then change orders, so you had to be really careful with scope creep and managing your client and be willing to say no and go back to them. But to your point about people leaving and going into other industries, you know, it's like part of the globalization and evolution of media. The really smart, talented, amazing people who were in visual effects are going to other areas that are growing after, you know, it's just a cycle. Visual effects has gone through its cycle. It's a, you know, loop-de-loop, but I've seen a lot of friends leave, start their own companies, go into tech, and that is just part of the evolution of entertainment.
I was going to
Film
say,
isn't as sexy as it was anymore. It's niching down, and they don't have the money, and it's not as interesting as some other types of entertainment.
And the stock options in VFX companies aren't a way to your first Maserati.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
well, I also think a lot of it, because I've had a lot of friends too that have left the industry to go to other things, gone to Oculus, gone to Google, gone to Facebook, all those kinds of things. And I think a lot of it also has to do with personal satisfaction and the ability to really explore what you want to explore, versus being like channeled into this little thing is what you're going to do, and then it's going to get passed on, you're going to do it again.
Yeah, the studios have made it not fun.
Yeah, it's and I used to teach at university too, and these students come into the industry thinking, I'm going to do all this amazing stuff and cool stuff, and then they get their first job and they're sitting in a corner and then they're told to push the red button, you know? And not that can't happen, but I think there is this, once you've done that for a while, I think that there's this need to have some more personal satisfaction of being creative and getting everything out there. And so it's definitely a problem.
Okay, let's switch gears now to looking forward. So Shannon, I had a lot of trouble at breakfast when someone asked me, where's the limits of what I teach inside fxphd.com? They said, how do you define what you're doing? Because you're doing VR and that's not visual effects. And I sort of had to stop and think, yeah, is VR in our industry or is VR in a different industry?
I think it's in the industry of entertainment and telling a story. And so I believe absolutely it's in our industry. And a lot of really amazing visual effects people have left and are going into VR. And in a way, I have found with Jeff Jasper, who's our digital supervisor, it's a very easy transition. Having the knowledge and understanding how images are manipulated is a big advantage in the early days as we develop VR.
And Alex, we're not even close from my point of view of being at the point that we can see the edge of VR, AR. It's like when we're with stereo, I could say, once you've got it so I, you know, have a good stereo experience, that's a good job, and I can tick that. I'm not even at the edge of knowing where I could define AR and VR as having met that end game. We've got a lot of tech out there we haven't even found yet.
Yeah, I would agree. I think with virtual reality content, you're already seeing some very impressive content that is generated completely digitally. I think that lends itself very easily to the medium. I think with filmed content, we're really just scratching the surface of how we capture the world around us and how we capture people in a way that allows us, from a storytelling perspective, to visually get across ideas in the way that we need to make it as compelling as it should be.
So Shannon, can I pick up on a point you made earlier about getting into making your own content?
Yeah.
In this early days, it's easy to make your own content because no one's buying anything, because no one has any headsets, because there's no money to be made. He said slightly sarcastically. But if it suddenly becomes a place that you can make a lot of money and you can make really good films, won't we just see all the studios walk in and say, you know, early adopters step aside, we're stepping in, and we're going to have the same thing repeated in the VR, AR space that we have in the movie space?
It might go through that cycle, but I believe early on for you know, people who are here, there's a real opportunity to move in and establish a name. And then it's like any business cycle, you have lots of smaller companies and they all start to roll up. And there will be studios that hire us to create content for them. And the key thing is like 3D. You have to make content for that medium and not just take film and shove it in like a VR. It's in a VR like headset. It has to be for that medium, and there's a real opportunity for creativity there. But in terms of creating our own content for film, like what Magnapus is doing and what we've done with our films, is there's a need for a new workflow for film, period. And that time is coming, and that we're already building it.
But the hallmark of your company is incredible depth in a wide variety of areas. Is that the mandatory, or just because you have like real skills in a lot of different areas, is that what a company needs these days, or is specialization the way to go?
Yeah, our creativity and our ability to manage are consistent, and tools and screens change. It's really irrelevant. It's still telling a story, either visually or with characters and dialogue. We just love to tell stories and be creative. Doesn't matter the tools. And it's fun to have short form content. You know, working on a film, it takes 2 years to get out, and to be able to make something and have that connection to our fans, like the movie fans, and build our own communities is a lot of fun.
So what do you think the nature of the narrative should be at the moment? Do we feel like VR and stuff is really well placed? Because I'm thinking about a young artist that might be watching this, right? And they're thinking, what is an area that I would sort of head towards to get in? Is that we're going to see a lot of stuff happening from people coming in from a 3D point of view, coming in because they understand stereo tech, coming in because they are good on set and know how to do visual effects? What do you think is going to like?
I think it's all the above. I think it's a situation where this new medium, we don't know exactly where it's headed. We're trying to figure that out as we go along. And with the new medium of VR and AR, it lends itself to so many different opportunities that they can kind of pick and choose and say, which part of it do I like the most? I mean, at Volusion, we look for generalists, really good generalists that can kind of do the whole thing, because this new pipeline that we've been talking about, you really need to understand from start to finish kind of how it works. It's not like you can just come in and build a model and hand it off and be done with it. You got to understand how that model's going to work with the cameras and with the headsets and with the the texturing and all that kind of stuff. You got to understand how the video is going to interact with that. And I think when young artists or anybody who's trying to get into the industry, when they look at this, they can really see, hey, there's opportunity to do kind of whatever I want. It's so open, and that's what's so exciting about it right now, is the industry's so open.
We saw a panel with Dennis Murin talking, and he said that he thought that George Lucas wanted the world to be kind of inhabited in VFX, white-collar jobs. And he said, you've got to get dirty. And Alex, I'm wondering about you, because you're an Academy Award-winning visual effects supervisor. You're a guy whose work I really respect, but you roll your sleeves up and jump on box. Is it a mandatory in this new age to get in there yourself to understand these things? I mean, because there's no kind of textbook.
I think it's two things. It's one, that I didn't get into this industry of visual digital media to just sort of tell other people what to do and get stuck in spreadsheets all day. I like to make things. So I'm always going to involve myself in making things as actively as I can. But I also feel, especially starting a young company that's continuing to evolve, that I felt that I personally wanted to have a very detailed understanding from both an artistic and from a technology standpoint of the areas that we were getting into. It was important to me to understand it on a base level myself, so that I can teach other people who I hire how to do things in a way that I think works well, and so that, quite honestly, I've been told not to swear, so I'll say, so that I can call BS on someone who I think isn't doing things up to spec.
Shannon,
Plus it's fun. I get in there and produce on the floor
You
on the day,
produce.
and it's like an opportunity to build our new creative muscles.
Nobody wants to be a house cat.
Yeah, but I also respect your managerial approach. You run a good company from running a company point of view, and part of that, of course, is managing the relationship to the clients and the clients' expectations. Could you just talk a bit about your attitude in terms of managing those expectations now? Like, do the clients understand the stuff well enough to jump in, or do you have to really sort of get them to have the right perspective on what that can be achieved in this new space?
I think it's like improv. Every client is different, and you have to work with them and what their needs are. Like, we're getting rid of a pain point for them. So is there an educational aspect to it? How you get them through fear and into excitement for a new tool? You want to provide a fun, safe environment for them to create. And then also not be afraid to guide them along and say no. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, one of the most powerful words in Hollywood is no, or in entertainment, and be willing to push back on your client and give them limitations. And that's why I like the cost plus model.
I love the cost plus model as well. I mean, there's a lot of things I'd like to fix in the industry. I'd start with that. I'd also have someone explain to people how subsidies actually work, but that's another discussion for another day.
Yeah.
In a second, we're going to be doing some questions. And in fact, as you probably know from the feed, you can send those questions electronically, and then you will appear here in a virtual reality. Oh, no, that's not quite. That's next year. But this year, actually, Bex will just feed us the questions. Also, you guys that are standing around, I'm throwing out T-shirts for people that are willing to ask questions. Wait, there's somebody up the back there. Okay, going deep. Okay, that wasn't my best shot. So if you've got some questions, get ready, and Bex, you'll jump in when we've got some. So, okay, so getting back to this thing that I started on a moment ago, like specifically, it's generalist skills that I'm hearing about, but I'm also hearing the need to be, well, certainly I've heard it a little bit here, I've certainly heard it in some other sessions, actually get your hands dirty on set. And I think VR is a little intimidating, but also it's actually possible to rent a bunch of GoPros and go experiment. And I guess you'd all advocate that?
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely. I'd say experiment as much as you possibly can. You know, I mean, I agree with both of them that getting your hands dirty and getting in there and understanding the tech not only helps you understand the process, but it helps your creativity, because then you can realize what is it that we can really do with this. We've worked with clients where they've said, oh, we want to do, you know, they see VR and they see opportunities and they say, oh, we want to do this and this and this and this. And then we have to tell them, wait, well, hold on a second. This isn't going to work. This is not going to work. You know, all the things like you said, no. But what it does is it gives them a much better experience in the end. And so there's so many opportunities to be creative. And when you get in there and do it, experiment, you know, grab, like you said, rent a bunch of GoPros, go see if you can do it.
Yeah, I mean,
it makes a big difference.
I'm not plugging this, but like the Foundry has educational copies, so you can get a copy of the software.
Yep.
As I said, if you are doing an elaborate GoPro rig today, you'd be doing it at a reasonable level for most people are at. I mean, obviously there's always higher that you can go, but the lessons from actually doing it seem to be really valid.
Yeah.
They are. And the headsets right now don't have the resolution, so you might as well grab a GoPro and explore and have some fun with it.
Yeah.
Alex, are you expecting this to explode? Sorry.
I was just going to say, if I may, Mike, I think the thing that I would tell an artist who is thinking about using their visual effects skills to explore some other areas is try not to be an operator. Don't just know which button to push because you've pushed it 100 times. Be an artist and be an engineer.
Yes.
Be those two things that come together that actually make a really great visual effects artist. Understand, don't just push the button, understand why you're pushing it. Know what it does. Really understand on a granular level what it is that you're doing. And just sort of focus on building general artistic ability that's going to translate no matter what the project is, no matter what the software is, no matter what the task is. But when it comes to, just giving an example, when I'm hiring people for virtual reality jobs, I get a lot of really brilliant, let's say, brilliant new compositors who have fantastic reels. Some of them are very good at doing a certain type of shot, and they aren't necessarily the best hire for a project where there is no established pipeline and there are no established best practices. The people who are really thriving right now are the ones who can really tear something apart and put it back together and get into the guts of it and understand how the pieces are working.
I respect people that say you should just grab a Theta camera and just go and do it yourself. I do respect that, and I respect the storytellers, especially from your company. But I also think that we sometimes are a little broad with that brushstroke. I think that there are opportunities there for real storytellers to couple with what I'm going to call creative problem solvers. Like I myself, I don't think I want to be a director. I want to creatively solve problems with tech. And I think if you can find someone that maybe is really good with actors and really good with narrative, and then team up with them, you can have a really good collaborative experience. And I think it's not just go make your own indie film by yourself alone, like get a group together.
Yeah, we're like Legos. We all click together for a project, work together, create something, and then you can break apart. And that actually is our advantage with tools and cloud and being a global economy for technical image creators. We can cross mediums and work together. I think that's a huge advantage and takes, in a way, changes the balance of power in creative. It makes us all more of on the same level than some creative telling you what to do.
Yeah, I think it's collaborative working together is a terrific thing. Okay, so I'm going to open it up to some questions. And not only that, I'm going to jump down and grab more T-shirts. I'm going to get in so much trouble from the Foundry for giving away all their T-shirts.
We will get you some more sizes, because they're just one size.
Okay. Questions?
Okay, so I do actually have some questions from the feed. To the panel, do you think the games industry is safer and in a better position than the movie VFX industry? I mean, I guess we could do right now and looking into the future. So I guess I'm going to throw that to Shannon first, and then we can go and then see what happens.
Is it safer in terms of longevity for the future? Or for
I mean,
VR?
the question's pretty open-ended.
A career path? I think they're both still strong. People are going to consume media. It's, which medium. But games are fun, and actually understanding that interactivity and understanding, like in games, you're already telling a story in 360 in a way. So there is a bit of an advantage there, in my opinion.
I see you nodding your head, Alex.
I think that it's an interesting question to me, because I see those lines really blurring more than I see those things remaining totally separate entities. I mean, that's kind of what's interesting about the sort of delivery platforms that we're all getting engaged in, is that the line between interactive and sort of passive is becoming a little bit more unclear, which I think is a really good thing.
Yeah. And look at theme parks. Like, we need to bring theme parks. That's immersive, but that is also...
Sorry, just kidding.
But they're also all the same tools. And a lot of people in visual effects are doing theme park projects.
Yeah. We had a panel yesterday on the convergence of games and film, and I think what was really indicative and interesting of that is that ILM was there, a film house, obviously, from the effects industry, a mecca, and they were showing the Star Wars world running on an iPad being rendered on the cloud.
From
and then we had a games company that was Epic showing the game engine Unreal being used for narrative storytelling in what is effectively a Pixar-style short film. And so clearly there is convergence in those skills, but I think the all-rounder point that Alex made is a really good one, which is, I think at the artist level, there are some skills. I don't think most games companies are really looking for roto and paint artists, but they're certainly looking for a bunch of other things.
Well, that harks back to what Alex was saying about, like, don't just know about pressing a button. Do you know what I mean? Like, have that whole thing going on. Do you know what I mean? Okay, so then we flip to the smaller screen, because that was another question that came up. So where do we, like, smaller screen, TV series? They're almost as cool, they are as cool to make as movies. I mean, God, they are like mini movies. Where do you think that's heading?
Who's working in TV right now?
I think that TV is starting to become like longer films that you break up into episodic, because people are writing them at the same time. There's an arc. They raise money to shoot them all at once, and then they finish them, and they're finding different distributors. It's not like the old days of television where like the studio or the network owned and you were the showrunner.
Yeah.
But people I have seen are raising money, and you're getting the event mini-series happening, and that's because you can amortize your costs and tell more of a story.
So, Mr. Peebler, do you want to use yours?
Hi, I'm Brad. Am I here? There.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Brad. I work with the Foundry. I have a comment and a question. So
Brad,
I work for the I work in the Redwood City office, which is in Silicon Valley. And first of all, let me say that the TV show is pretty scarily accurate.
Yes.
Related to the sort of brain drain, if you will, of computer vision, it is true that has occurred, and it's not just from the VFX industry. I have some friends that have a company in the biotech industry, and they desperately need computer vision engineers. They went to schools all across the country, and they said the halls were empty, the teachers were gone. They've literally just they hire any student, boom, they're hired. They pulled the teachers out. I think it's actually kind of a dangerous situation. And a lot of those people, one of them who was the lead, one of the leading computer vision engineers in the world he's got no project. He's at Google working on a food app because that's what he wants to do. So do no evil. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox there for a moment.
Can I just say, though, that people going to work in the tech... Hang on, I'll go over here. People going to work in Silicon Valley isn't as big a problem to me as when they all went to work, like the rocket engineers went to work on Wall Street. Because I don't know if you guys are in banking, but really, that sucks, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't mind Google doing stuff. I think Google is a good organization. I think, you know, a major Wall Street firm are a bunch of... And so consequently, if we're going to lose some people, I'd much prefer them to go to Silicon Valley than Wall Street.
And they're all going back to rockets because they are all starting rocket divisions.
I agree with you. Let me come full circle with that because I'm being a little bit cheeky, but I wanted to make a comment about developer satisfaction and artist satisfaction. The Moto team has the same core engineers that we started with in 2002. We've not lost a single core developer in the entire history of the company because we give them the flexibility. We don't just make them work to a spreadsheet. We do have tasks that they have to accomplish, but we give them also some creative flexibility to explore. I did have one young engineer who was very talented who came on several years later, Andrew, who was a real rock star, and he had a buddy. I was asking him, do you know anybody, any web developers? I'm looking for somebody. He said, I have a friend that I went to school with. He works at Facebook, but he makes 3 times what I make. But I said, well, why aren't you leaving to go do that? And he said, my friend will make, he's basically waiting 2 weeks to find out if he can move the like button 2 pixels. Whereas Andrew was able to get his hands in there and really work like crazy. Now, Andrew eventually went to Google, got a great job there, so we're happy for him. But there is something to be said for job satisfaction. So coming full circle on why Google is good and why Facebook is good, I'm going to ask you, I think, you mentioned the cycles of an industry.
Yep.
Do Google and Facebook represent a distribution mechanism for folks like yourselves to create and own your own intellectual IP now that Facebook has Oculus?
Absolutely.
Isn't that a great opportunity, YouTube, Oculus, to distribute your own materials?
It's a huge opportunity. And YouTube for 360 content as well. To go out and make connections, build a community, and be able to launch your content direct is what is happening more and more. The deals that people are getting right now in Hollywood are to YouTubers who have 14 million, 30 million people in their community on YouTube. Those are and they're starting to make films, and they're going to launch them on YouTube.
And
So being able to go direct is important. And in general, for what you're saying, I think globally, if you look at what's happening with Netflix, there's a creative land grab going on. You know, if you look at how many people are across the globe, a small percentage are really creative, technical people, and you have to find them and treat them well. And that includes for film. Who hasn't been doing that?
I was going to say the Netflix thing. And the other thing I was going to say, you should remember this, is you ever tried looking for something to watch on television and there isn't anything? And I have like 17 million channels now and everything else that I still don't find much. So I don't think we've gone too far away from content is king. And if you are producing compelling content with really great stories, then the audience will find you. Now, they might find you on whole different mechanisms, but they don't care.
Yeah.
And, you know, Mike, you asked earlier, kind of comparing VFX to the animation industry. I mean, from my naive perspective, isn't it the difference between those who own their intellectual property? Most of the animation companies are creating materials that they own versus the VFX, which tends to be more of a services industry.
Yeah.
Is that part of the problem? And having YouTube and other independent methods to distribute allows the people who are doing services to also explore owning their own IP. And can't that fundamentally change the VFX business?
everybody wanted to be Pixar once Pixar made $1 billion, but I actually think it's a more fundamental problem. I think we thought that producers were stupid, and pick up on some stuff that I learned from these guys. If you think about a VFX budget, it's actually VFX and set extensions, so that's art department, makeup because we're fixing stuff, hair because we're fixing stuff, wardrobe, lighting, like there's a telegraph pole that we need to move that. So there's actually the VFX budget and everybody else's department digital work that falls under VFX, and we said the producers can't understand this stuff, so we'll give them a flat bid. And I think a really good producer and line producer totally understands VFX. It isn't rocket science. And if you're working with good companies, and I'm not with a company, but you're working with these guys, then they can be open, and the producer will work with them and appreciate the openness. And once you get to that, then you've got a better business model to move forward.
You create a good relationship. Like I've had friends who were being interviewed for films, and the studio said, if you don't put a vendor out of business, you're not doing your job. That was several years ago. And you know, it's like that relationship doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
And you have to create a trusting relationship that's open. You're creating something. And to an extent, the skill set to create some of these big films are beyond the ability of some of these big producers, because so much of the tools have changed, distribution, marketing, how you finance them has changed. So there's just real opportunity all over the place.
What do you think, Alex?
I would agree. I think what's exciting about the space that we're all getting into, everyone on the stage here, is that the distribution platforms for the type of projects that we're getting involved in will be highly democratized, for both better and worse. You know, there's something to be said for a system of filters that sort of weeds out stuff you don't want to have to sift through to find a good experience online. But I think what we're looking at now is much more akin to the way the App Store works or Steam works than a studio system where there are 6 entities that essentially control all of the media that you're going to see in theaters. It's much more open-ended, and you don't have to go through those, I guess, that system of filters and barriers to get your own stuff out into the world.
Can I be also slightly controversial and say we actually need to own it as well? Because to give you an example, I was just up at the ACES group discussing workflow, and in VFX it's not uncommon that we get a lot of metadata recorded on set. We know a lot of information about the lens, we know a lot of information about the f-stop. It's awesome, it gets recorded in the metadata that goes to the codecs. And somewhere between there and the operator who's trying to do the tracking, who's working in Nuke, all the metadata is stripped out. And so you're sitting in Nuke and you want to find out information, and it theoretically can be in the OpenEXR, and the pipeline broke between us saying on set, we'd love all this data, and actually having it move through. And there's an enormous amount of confidence in Nuke looking at the metadata from the camera that was there on the OpenEXR frame versus the piece of paper with the coffee stains saying that it was a 173 mil lens. And you're like, 173 mil? This is a wide shot, what? And so we need to educate and insist on better flows of work, better things. It's not all somebody else's fault, so we can't get off the hook here. It's not, VFX industry isn't without its own worst enemy kind of properties.
But you have, I mean, money is also driving some of that. Like if you are capturing assets and data, you need that metadata. When you're planning your film, you need to think about putting that metadata in there, how you're storing it, how you're going to use it across 3 films, and then a video game and an episodic, and you want that. You have to do that now. That's part of the new workflow.
That's right. It's standards and practices, and it has to be part of the assumptions of any work order, essentially.
But that being said, a remarkable number of films, like last year on the SciTech, I think one of the committees, every major VFX vendor that was represented, every single film they were working on at that instant, not a single film had metadata. I'm just using that as an example, right? There are a lot of other things like this. We just need to be, you know, not just pretending like this is all somebody else's problem.
Yes.
I think we're running out of time. Can I ask one more question?
I'm just wondering if anyone who's been sitting through, because I've seen quite a lot of you like sort of nodding your heads. Like, I'm just wondering if any of you have got anything you want to input into this discussion at all. No? Okay.
I have a question for the panel.
You've got one.
I just need a one-word answer from everybody.
You've got one.
Okay, because this is for the kids, and the kids are our future. The question came earlier about games industry, and I think we assumed that they were asking about their career path, and I think a lot of SIGGRAPH obviously attracts a lot of students. A lot of people are interested. Generalist or specialist? So that's an interesting topic for me. There are people who want to be generalists. There are those who want to be specialists and just have a, as you mentioned earlier, pushing the red button in the corner. I think I watch the industry and it tends to kind of go back and forth. If you were advising someone today, would you recommend that they go deep on a specific, like I'm just going to be a modeler or a compositor, or do you think it's more valuable to be a generalist and understand a lot of different categories?
I think that it's up to the individual and who they are as an artist. Some people I know who are matte painters who've been doing it since glass are always working, but they're working on 20 different projects. So they're a specialist and they're always working. And then I know a lot of generalists who love that opportunity. So it's really up to the individual. Like, I love business, that's my art.
Yeah. I think that even if you are interested in focusing on a specialty, like if you just, in my case, I was mostly a compositor coming up in the industry. But I think what made me a decent compositor, what allowed me to grow my career, was that I did understand the entire pipeline, not just my step. So I would say whether you want to sort of be jack of all trades or whether you want to be master of one, you have a responsibility if you want to be able to grow your career and if you want to be useful. You should understand the entire process from start to finish as much as you possibly can. That's the type of people who are going to have a flexible career path and who are going to have choices instead of tough decisions.
Yeah. When I was teaching, I had a student come to me, kind of that same exact thing, and I was teaching a character class, and it was, you had to design the character, you had to model the character, you had to, to go through the whole process, rig it, animate it, give a little animation at the end. And he came to me and he said, well, I don't want to do all this, I'm just going to be an animator anyways. And I said, no, you need to go through it because you need to understand the model, you need to understand how the texturing works, you need to understand how the rigging works, because even though all you're going to be doing is animation, if that's what you're going to do, if you understand all that, it'll inform what you're going to do. And so I would wholeheartedly agree that if they decide that they want to go down a specific channel, at least become an expert in that, but also understand the rest of it, because it makes a huge difference to your work in that specific area.
And helps you collaborate, because you know the whole process. You're not screwing the next person.
You can talk to the guy down the hall and not just look at him blindly.
Okay, Twitter, everyone's been like, I'm glued, this is brilliant, really good stuff is being covered here. So I want a round of applause. Mr. Seymour, thank you so much.
Actually, this woman here is magnificent, and would you give her a round of
applause?
Thank you, Bex.
Thanks for embarrassing
me. And our
me.
panelists.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Shannon, thank you. Alex, Barry, thank you so much. So we're going to take a break, but before we do, Ink Dependence asked, could you throw a t-shirt 9,500 kilometers?
Right, so I'm at Mike Seymour on Twitter. If you Twitter me, I will get the Foundry to send it to you directly, FedEx.
That's brilliant, because I was going to offer, but now Mike is going to do it for you.
Just get shipped. They'll send it for you.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll be up with a Murray presentation from the girls at Ready at Dawn.
Oh, this is really good, yeah.
This is really awesome. So thanks again, guys. Really, really awesome discussion. Thank you, Mr. Seymour.
Thank you.
Thank you.